It was supposed to be a joke. Just two neighbors teasing each other across a narrow strip of grass and a crooked wooden fence. But that moment, sharp, awkward, and filled with assumptions, became the beginning of something neither of us expected. Something that would quietly change the way I saw people, and the way I treated them. Before we get into this story, if you believe small acts of kindness can change lives, make sure you subscribe to your channel name, like this video, and drop a comment about a moment when someone surprised you with kindness. Your support helps us share more real stories that remind the world we're all human. Now, let me tell you what really happened. I moved into that little rental house in early October. The kind with faded blue siding and a mailbox that leaned slightly to the left, like it had given up standing straight years ago. It was in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio. Nothing fancy. Just rows of modest homes, cracked driveways, and front porches with plastic chairs. I was 38, recently divorced, and trying to figure out how to be alone without feeling lonely. The house next door belonged to a woman named Marlene. I didn't know her name at first. All I knew was that she seemed to always be watching. The first time I noticed her, I was dragging boxes from my car. I looked up, and there she was, standing by her living room window, curtains slightly pulled back. She didn't wave. Didn't smile. Just stared. I remember thinking, great. I moved next to the neighborhood spy. Over the next few days, it kept happening. I'd step outside to grab the mail, and she'd be on her porch. I'd mow the lawn, and I'd catch her silhouette in the window. Once, I even saw her when I was taking the trash out at night. Porch light on. Watching. So one afternoon, when I stepped outside to fix a loose shutter and saw her again, I couldn't help myself. She was standing near the fence this time. Gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Oversized pink sweatshirt. Hands on her hips. She squinted at me and said, "Are you peeping again?" I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You're always looking over here," she said. "Every time I step outside." I let out a short laugh, more defensive than amused. I could say the same thing. "Stop standing there like you want me to." Her face tightened. For a second, I thought she might snap back. Instead, she turned without another word and went inside. I felt a strange mix of victory and guilt. Like I'd just won a pointless argument. For the next week, we avoided each other. If I heard her door open, I stayed inside. If I saw her car pull into the driveway, I waited before checking the mail. It was childish, but easier than dealing with the tension. Then, one evening, something changed. It was cold. One of those sharp Midwest nights where the air feels like it bites your skin. I was sitting on my couch, half watching a football game, when I heard a thud outside. Not loud, but heavy. At first, I ignored it. Then I heard it again. Curiosity got the better of me. I opened my front door and stepped onto the porch. Marlene was lying on the ground near her steps. For a split second, I froze. The woman I'd labeled as nosy and annoying was now small and fragile against the concrete. I ran over. "Ma'am? Are you okay?" She looked up at me, her eyes wide with embarrassment more than pain. "I slipped," she said quietly. "These old knees don't listen anymore." I helped her sit up. Her hands were shaking. I noticed how thin they were, how light she felt when I helped her stand. "Let's get you inside," I said. She hesitated, then nodded. Her house smelled faintly of lavender and something baked, like cinnamon. It was tidy but worn. Family photos lined the walls, children, grandchildren, a man in a military uniform. I helped her to the couch. "Do you need me to call someone?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. I'll be fine." But she didn't look fine. I grabbed a bag of frozen peas from her freezer and wrapped it in a towel for her knee. She watched me the whole time, that same intense stare I'd grown to resent. Finally, she said, I wasn't peeping, you know. I paused. What? I wasn't watching you to be nosy. Her voice softened. I just like to know who's around. I didn't say anything. My husband passed 3 years ago, she continued. And my son lives in Arizona. My daughter's in Chicago. Most days, it's just me and the TV. The pieces started to click. When I saw you move in, she said, I was just curious. Wanted to make sure you seemed decent. I almost laughed at that, but there was no humor in her face. It's scary living alone, she added. Her words hit harder than I expected. I get that, I said quietly. She looked at me. Really looked at me this time. You live alone too. It wasn't a question. Yeah, I admitted. Recently. She nodded slowly. Divorce? I smiled weakly. That obvious? She shrugged. I've lived long enough to recognize that kind of tired. We both sat there for a moment, the tension from a week ago feeling small and foolish. Over the next few days, I checked on her more often. At first, it was just quick things, bringing her mail to the door, taking her trash bin to the curb. Then it became coffee on Saturday mornings. She told me about her husband, Frank. How he used to whistle off-key while fixing things around the house. How he built that crooked fence himself. How she still talked to him sometimes when the house felt too quiet. I told her about my divorce. About the silence that filled my evenings. About how I'd started sleeping with the TV on just to hear another voice. One afternoon, as we sat on her porch, she said, you know, when I asked if you were peeping, I was hoping you'd come over and introduce yourself. I laughed. That's a strange way to do it. I've never been good at first impressions, she said with a wink. Winter came fast that year. Snow piled high along the sidewalks. I started shoveling her driveway before she even had to ask. She'd protest from the door, wrapped in her pink sweatshirt, but I could tell she appreciated it. One night, just before Christmas, she knocked on my door. She handed me a small tin. Sugar cookies, she said. Frank's recipe. I invited her in. We sat by my tiny artificial tree and ate cookies that were slightly too sweet but somehow perfect. You know, she said, kindness doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be consistent. I thought about that for a long time after she left. A few months later, in early spring, Marlene got sick. Pneumonia. She was in the hospital for almost 2 weeks. I visited every other day. The nurses assumed I was her son. She didn't correct them. When she finally came home, weaker but smiling, she squeezed my hand and said, see? You were peeping for a reason. I laughed through the tightness in my throat. By summer, the fence between our houses felt less like a boundary and more like a shared line. We'd sit on either side sometimes, passing lemonade over the top. The day I decided to move again, this time for a job opportunity in another state, I dreaded telling her. She listened quietly as I explained. I'm proud of you, she said. You're starting over. I'm going to miss you, I admitted. She reached across the fence and squeezed my hand. Kindness travels, she said. You take it with you. On my last day, as the moving truck pulled away, she stood on her porch. I walked over one more time. She looked at me with that familiar squint and said, are you peeping again? I grinned. Only because you're standing there like you want me to. This time, we both laughed. Sometimes, the people we misunderstand the most are the ones who need connection the most. A sharp comment can hide loneliness. A watchful eye can hide fear. And a simple act, helping someone off the cold ground, can turn suspicion into friendship. Kindness doesn't always start with warm smiles and perfect introductions. Sometimes, it starts with awkwardness. With misunderstandings. With pride swallowed and doors opened. If there's someone in your life you've misjudged, maybe this is your sign. Knock on the door. Say hello. Offer help. You never know what quiet battle they're fighting behind their window. Because in the end, kindness isn't about grand gestures. It's about showing up. And sometimes, it's about realizing that the person you thought was peeping, was just hoping not to feel alone.